All right, so welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something I think we've probably all wondered about at some point. Whether you've lost a whole afternoon to Monopoly
Hmm.
or, just a quick game of, I don't know, pick up basketball, or you've gotten sucked into like a deep video game world. What is it about some games that makes them so captivating and others just, I don't know, they just don't do it for you?
Hmm.
And we've got a really interesting mix of stuff to look at today. I mean, everything from like our own personal experiences with games, all different kinds of games. But we're also going to be looking at some really fascinating ideas from the world of game design.
Yeah, for sure.
Our goal is to kind of unlock the secrets behind why some games just grab us and don't let go.
Hmm.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand a little bit more about your own kind of like science of fun.
I like that. The science of fun. Yeah, and one thing that really struck me when we were looking at all this material is how much of that fun actually comes from learning. Like, even when we don't realize it, it's like this hidden engine driving a lot of what makes games so engaging. So I think one of the things we really want to dig into is why we keep coming back for more, even when we're not consciously trying to learn something new.
Right.
And by the end of this, you should have a much better sense of why you're drawn to certain games and maybe why some others just fall flat.
Yeah, okay, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
One idea that came up a bunch in the stuff we were looking at was this concept of homo ludens, which
Mm.
sounds a little intimidating. It's
Yeah.
actually from this guy, Johann Huizinga.
Yeah.
And it basically means playing human.
It sounds very academic.
It does. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. But it's actually a really, really simple idea.
Yeah.
And I think a really powerful one. He's basically saying that play isn't just something we do to, you know, fill time or avoid boredom or whatever. It's actually like this core part of what makes us human.
Totally.
And, it's how we learn.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. You've got all this stuff you're supposed to be doing, and yet there's still that urge to play a game or mess around or whatever it is.
Like even just picking up your phone to play a quick game.
Exactly. Huizinga would say that, right? That's the playing human in you coming out.
It's like this intrinsic drive we all have.
Yeah.
And what I find really fascinating about Huizinga's take is that he sees play as something we actively choose to do.
Right.
It's voluntary. It's not like work or something that's imposed on us.
Right.
And it also has these boundaries, right? Both in terms of time and often a specific place.
Yeah.
Like you think about a board game, it's laid out on the table or you've got the football pitch. And crucially, play is this huge driver of both social connection and creativity. It's like we're stepping into this special zone where there are rules, but also this amazing space for our imaginations to run wild.
Right. Like an invisible circle is drawn around whatever it is we're playing.
Exactly.
And the thing is, it's not just about, having fun and goofing off, right?
Yeah.
Like the sources we looked at, they really highlight how play is crucial for our brain development.
Mm-hmm.
And even how we learn to regulate our emotions. It's like this safe space to experiment, to try out different strategies, and to work on our social skills.
Yeah, without like the super high stakes of the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah, that safe space element is huge. And it really gets this idea that fun and learning are actually really intertwined. It's not just a coincidence that the things we find fun are often things that teach us something along the way.
Totally. And speaking of fun, we can't ignore what's going on in our brains when we're actually enjoying ourselves, right?
Oh.
Think about that feeling you get when you finally crack a tough level in a video game or, you pull off some crazy trick shot. A lot of times that's your brain releasing dopamine.
Yeah, dopamine. It's like the brain's reward system. It
Yeah.
gives us that little rush of good feeling when we do something it considers beneficial.
Right.
And, learning and exploring are definitely on that list.
So it's like our brain's giving us the thumbs up every time we figure out the rules of a new game or manage to beat a challenge. It's like, good job, keep going.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that, and one of the articles we read pointed this out, a lot of this learning happens without real life consequences.
Right.
I mean, think about it. You can fail a million times in a video game and it's no big deal.
Right.
You just start over. But in the real world, the stakes are often much higher. So games offer this amazing environment for us to learn and experiment without having to worry too much about messing up.
Exactly, yeah. It's like a low-pressure learning lab.
And dopamine actually plays a huge role in how we learn in those environments.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, it helps our brains create strong connections between the actions we take and the outcomes. So, you make a move in a game, some good happens, you get a little dopamine hit.
Right.
And that reinforces the connection, making you more likely to try that move again and basically learn from the experience. So it's this powerful cycle of learning, and enjoyment, all fueled by dopamine.
That's so cool. But it sounds like there's a sweet spot, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like if a game's too easy, we get bored really quickly.
Yeah.
But if it's so hard that we can't make any progress, we get frustrated and want to quit.
Right, exactly. It's about finding that Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
That perfect level of challenge that keeps us engaged. You know, we're constantly being pushed, but still feel like we can actually achieve something.
And I imagine what we're personally interested in also plays a big role in keeping that dopamine flowing.
Oh, without a doubt. And this brings up a really fascinating question, which is, why is this drive for fun so deeply ingrained in us?
Right.
You know, it's not just about passing time. And the sources we looked at, they suggest that we actually need to look way back, you know, to our evolutionary history to understand this. Play is not just a modern invention. It's been absolutely crucial for our survival as a species.
Wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and a great example of this is young animals.
Uh-huh.
They spend a ton of time playing, and that play is actually teaching them essential skills for things like, you know, hunting and social interaction and how to navigate their world.
Right. Like lion cubs roughhousing are basically practicing their hunting skills.
Right, exactly. And figuring out where they fit in the pride's social hierarchy. And it's amazing to think that for humans, games offer this relatively safe environment to hone all sorts of abilities.
Right.
Whether it's our thinking skills, our social skills, or even just physical coordination. And all of this happens without the, you know, life or death consequences of the real world.
Right. So it's not just about entertainment. It's like built into us to want to play.
Right. This need for fun is not some random quirk. It's a fundamental part of how we've evolved to learn and thrive.
That's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah, and one of the ways games tap into this is through our natural ability to recognize patterns.
No, interesting.
Humans are amazing pattern detectors. I mean, we're constantly trying to make sense of the world around us, and we do that by identifying these regularities and rules.
Right.
And games, at their core, are essentially systems built on patterns.
Yeah.
And when they present patterns that are engaging and connect with what we already know, they can be really captivating. It's like our brains get a little thrill every time we start to figure things out.
Yeah, it's like those aha moments when you suddenly understand the underlying rules of the game.
Exactly.
But there's a flip side to that too, right? I mean, what happens when those patterns become too predictable?
Right.
It's like you get that been there, done that feeling, and the game starts to feel stale.
This is what we call pattern fatigue.
Oh.
When we're constantly exposed to the same mechanics, those patterns that were once new and exciting, they just become routine. We stop encountering new information. We stop facing new challenges. And it's this feeling of, you know, I've seen this all before, and it can really kill our motivation to keep playing. It's kind of like, you know, listening to the same song on repeat. Even if you love the song, eventually it just becomes grating.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, eating your favorite food every single day. The first few times, it's amazing. But at some point, you're going to want to try something different. And this seems like this would be a big challenge for game designers.
Oh, for sure.
How do you keep introducing new patterns and new challenges,
Right.
you know, to keep people engaged and prevent that pattern fatigue?
Right. And that's where really understanding what individual players are looking for becomes super important.
Right.
The sources we looked at, they all emphasize this point, that each player brings their own unique preferences to the table. And these preferences really shape their experience. I mean, some people, they're all about competition. Others are drawn to a really rich, immersive story. And still others might be most interested in just exploring a virtual world and seeing what they can discover. And when a game really connects with those individual interests, that's when it's much more likely to keep our attention over time.
Yeah. It's like that game that has the amazing graphics and the super cool gameplay.
Yeah.
But the story is weak, or there's no story at all.
Right.
It's just not going to do it for certain people.
It's all about finding that connection.
Yeah.
That resonance between what the game offers and what the player is actually seeking. And if they don't align, well, people are going to lose interest pretty quickly.
Right. And it seems like there's also this balance that needs to be struck between keeping things simple enough so people can understand what's going on, but complex enough so it stays interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean, a game that's too simple can feel like a chore.
Right.
There's no real challenge to it.
Like you're just going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly. But on the flip side, if a game is so complex that it throws like a massive rule book at you, it can just feel overwhelming. You know, you don't even know where to begin.
That's like information overload.
Totally. And that just makes people want to give up.
Exactly. So the real trick is finding that sweet spot.
Right.
where the game offers enough challenge to keep us engaged and encourages us to, stretch our skills and our understanding, but without making us feel like we're completely lost at sea.
Right. Which I imagine is tricky to pull off.
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. And that's where these ideas from game theory and this concept of game design patterns can be super helpful.
Okay, so what are game design patterns?
So think of them as like the fundamental building blocks of games. They're the underlying structures that kind of shape how we interact with the game and make decisions. And the basic idea is that as players, we're constantly learning and adapting to these patterns. And the games that offer new and interesting variations on those patterns, or they present unique challenges within those patterns, those are the ones that tend to really hook us.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah, and one of the articles we read went into this in detail and even laid out these 6 key categories of patterns that games often use. And I thought this was super insightful.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the first one is called calculation of odds.
Okay.
And it's all about, that risk versus reward element. Think about games like poker or even something like backgammon.
Uh-huh.
You're constantly having to weigh probabilities and make decisions based on potential outcomes. It's like a mental puzzle.
Right, like you might have a good hand, but is it worth the risk to bet more?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the first one. What's next?
All right, so the next one is social status.
This is a huge driver in competitive multiplayer games.
Right.
Like think about Apex Legends or League of Legends.
Okay.
Part of the appeal is the desire to climb the ranks, to achieve something, and be recognized for it. It taps into this very basic human need for, belonging and a sense of accomplishment.
Right. Like you're not just playing for yourself, you're playing for your team, for your guild, for your ranking.
Exactly. Okay, so the third category is spatial reasoning.
Okay.
And this is where games like Tetris or Portal really excel.
Those are good ones.
It's all about being able to visualize and manipulate objects in your mind, to solve puzzles or navigate these complex 3D spaces.
That's like a mental workout.
It really is. All right, the next category is memory.
Okay.
And this isn't just about remembering where you left that cool item you found in a video game world.
Right.
In games like Blackjack or even in strategy games where you need to recall like enemy movements, being able to remember information and use it strategically is crucial.
Yeah, that adds a whole other layer of challenge, right?
Absolutely. All right, next up is visceral responses.
Okay.
And this is where you see those real adrenaline junkies, the ones who love the thrill of the game, they really come alive.
Right.
Think about those moments in, survival horror game or an intense firefight in a shooter game like Call of Duty. Those moments that get your heart racing and trigger that fight or flight response.
Right, like you're really in the moment.
Exactly. And finally, we have teamwork, which is obviously a huge element in cooperative multiplayer games. It's about working together with other players, coordinating strategies, and relying on each other to achieve a shared objective. And what's really cool is that this guy, Costa, he actually argues that these underlying patterns aren't just limited to games.
Oh, interesting. What does he mean?
Well, he says they can actually teach us valuable skills that we can then apply to the real world.
Oh, wow.
Like, think about assessing risks in business decisions or being able to collaborate effectively on a team project at work.
Wow, so it's like these games are training us for real-life situations without us even realizing it.
In a way, yes. It's like this hidden curriculum within the game.
That's amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, and all of these really cool patterns we've been talking about, they're brought to life through what we call game mechanics.
Right.
These are the nuts and bolts of how a game actually operates. The rules, the systems, everything that dictates how you interact with the game, and they are absolutely crucial to keeping players engaged.
Okay, so game mechanics are basically what make the game playable. It's the framework for all those patterns we've been talking about.
Exactly. And one of the hallmarks of really engaging game mechanics is their ability to adapt.
Adapt.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, think about it. The best games often adjust to your individual skill level. They provide this kind of ongoing learning experience without the sting of failing in the real world.
Right.
It's like the game is constantly recalibrating itself to keep you in that sweet spot.
Right. Not too easy, not too hard.
Exactly. And there's even this idea, and some of our sources talked about this, it's like the holy grail of game design.
Oh, okay. What is it?
A game that could offer like endless challenges, but challenges that are perfectly tailored to your individual ability.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Right. It's this promise of like constant growth and mastery.
Right.
And that's incredibly compelling for a lot of players.
So how do games actually do this? Like, how do they adapt to each player's skill?
So there are a few different ways they do this. You've got things like dynamic difficulty adjustment, which means the game itself gets harder or easier depending on how you're doing.
Okay, I've seen that in some games.
Right. And then there are things like skill trees, where you can choose how your character develops.
Right.
And level up systems. And all of this gives the player a sense of control over how they approach the challenges in the game.
Right, so it's not just a one-size-fits-all experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, feedback is also incredibly important.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Players need to know if they're doing things right, what they're doing wrong, so they can learn and adjust their strategies.
Right, because if you don't know why you're failing, you're just going to get frustrated.
Exactly. And another key ingredient in all of this is innovation. I mean, if every new game just recycled the same old mechanics,
Right.
things would get pretty stale pretty quickly. That's
Yeah.
why there's this constant push in the gaming world for new and unique experiences, Fresh ideas, creative new ways to interact with the game world. That's what really generates excitement and keeps players coming back for more.
Right, it's that novelty, that creative problem-solving that people love.
Right. And these new mechanics can actually spark these whole community discussions as players figure out the best strategies and share their discoveries.
Right, like the online forums and all that stuff.
Exactly. So it's not just about playing the game, it's about being part of this larger community of players.
But it's not just about the mechanics, right?
Yeah.
Like, what about the story? I mean, story seems like it'd be a pretty big part of how much we get sucked into a game.
Oh, absolutely. The narrative element, the storytelling, plays a huge role. A well-crafted story can make you really connect with the characters. It gives you this sense of purpose, like you're on a mission. And it pulls you into the game's world in a way that nothing else can.
Right, like think about those games where you actually feel something for the characters.
Right.
Like you're invested in their fate.
Exactly. It's not just about winning or losing. It's about what happens to these virtual people you've come to care about.
And I've noticed a lot of games use those classic story structures,
Yeah.
like the hero's journey.
Right. Like you see in, The Legend of Zelda and so many other games.
Right, and those really resonate with us, don't they? It's
Mhm.
tapping into these really universal human experiences.
Absolutely. But our sources also caution that a poorly developed narrative can actually have the opposite effect. Even if the gameplay is great, a weak story can create this kind of disconnect. You might enjoy the moment-to-moment action, but without a strong story to tie it all together, the experience can feel kind of empty.
Right, like it's missing something.
Exactly. So it really is about striking that balance,
Right.
that sweet spot between, engaging gameplay and a rich, meaningful narrative. And some games, like The Witcher 3, they're often praised for getting that balance just right.
Yeah, that's a good one. And one of the sources we looked at had this really interesting test for how fun a game is. They said, try playing it with no graphics and no sound.
Oh, wow.
And if it can still hold your attention, just based on the pure mechanics and the narrative structure, then you know it's probably a really well-designed game.
That's a great test. Really gets at the core of it.
Yeah. And finally, we really need to consider the fact that players are not all the same. We've got different preferences, different strengths, different things we're looking for when we choose a game.
Totally. I mean, someone who loves the really complex strategy of, a big strategy game,
Right.
they might be totally bored by a fast-paced action game.
Right. Or vice versa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So game designers really need to be aware of these different interests, whether it's a love of competition or maybe someone's more into solo story-driven games.
Right.
And they need to design games that cater to those different types of players and things like adjustable difficulty settings,
All right.
personalized feedback systems. These can really make a game more welcoming and engaging for a wider range of people.
Yeah, totally. And our sources also talk about why we might gravitate towards certain genres.
Yeah.
It could be something emotional, like nostalgia for a type of game we played when we were kids.
Right.
Or maybe we're looking for a specific type of challenge,
Oh,
mental, physical, whatever. Or it could even be just the influence of our friends, and what they're all playing.
for sure.
And it seems like understanding those underlying motivations is really key if you want to make a game that people will connect with.
Absolutely. If you want to create a game that resonates, you need to understand what makes your audience tick.
Right. So it's not just about making a fun game. It's about making the right fun game for the right people.
Exactly.
So If we try to put all of this together, it seems like what makes games so captivating is this really interesting mix of learning and challenge, all driven by that dopamine reward system in our brains.
Mm,
And it's all rooted in this fundamental human need to play.
right.
But we get bored when things become too predictable, or when there's a mismatch between what the game offers and what we're actually looking for as individuals.
Right.
The games that really grab us, they manage to strike a balance between simple and complex. They use those game design patterns in really clever ways, and a lot of times they weave in these amazing stories that pull us in and make us care.
It's like this magic formula.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think it comes down to recognizing that we're all different
Yes.
and that we all bring something unique to the table when we play a game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you want to make games that people will love,
Mm.
you have to embrace that diversity.
Absolutely. It's about inclusivity, making sure everyone feels welcome and can find something they enjoy.
Exactly. So we started out by asking what it is about games that makes them so captivating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, definitely. It's given us a new framework for looking at our own experiences with games.
Totally. And on that note, here's a final thought for you to chew on.
Okay.
Think about the games that you personally enjoy the most, the ones you keep coming back to. Now that we've had this conversation, can you spot some of those mechanics, those patterns, those story elements that really hook you? And maybe, just maybe, understanding these principles in the context of games, maybe that can give you some insights into other parts of your life.
Yeah, like what makes other learning experiences more engaging?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, dare I say, more fun. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time.